Okay, so I've had the bike for about 13 months now, and I put it in for its first annual service, and it's just come back cleaned up with a diagnostic report as well, which we'll have a look at. It shows my use and how the motor's gone along in the last year. I've done just under 3,000 kilometres, which is just under a couple of thousand miles, and it's been absolutely bomb-proof. It's been an excellent buy. Changes that I've made to the bike from stock. This was a Cube Touring Iridium bike bought for just under £1,600 in December of 2018. The only changes I've made to stock, apart from, well, the tyres. So I put Marathon Plus tyres on. I think they're about maybe 40 or 50 quid to put those on in aggregate, and they're slimed as well. So they're Marathon Plus Tour tyres, as you can see, with the sort of hybrid tread. And they haven't had a puncture, so they've been absolutely fine. I think the stock tyres got a puncture in the first couple of hundred kilometres, but since then I've done 2,700 kilometres or whatever on the marathons with absolutely no issue. So I'd thoroughly recommend them. And the only other change I've made was that I've replaced the stock bell, and I've gone and got a very nice crane bell, which is a Japanese company. That's a very nice ring, sustained clear ring. It's about £10 from Amazon, so that's okay. So if we have a look at the specs, I think I've been over them in the early videos, so they obviously haven't changed. You have a suspension seat post there. You've got the Intuvia display, which is the one up from the Purion display. See the odometer there saying 2,922 kilometres. In common, that obviously is the controller, and the modes go up and down just with a click if you. I tend to use Eco and Tour. I don't tend to use Sport or Turbo very much. The light obviously is connected. The lights drain about 3 watts. So that's so you've got a 500 watt hour battery in there. So the lights are fairly innocuous when it comes to drain. And that's about it. It's got a 9-speed gear on it. The service. What happened on the service was a new chain, a new cassette to go with the new chain, and new brake pads. Otherwise, nothing needed doing, so that's just the normal wear you obviously expect after 2,000 miles of cycling. The sort of cycling I do on it is mixed. I bought it originally to do touring, just at weekends and in evenings, and when it was light, up and down rivers, canals, up into the Peak District a bit. I've actually since then started commuting on it in the last few months of the year. Commute to Manchester from Stockport, so that's about a round trip of about 15 miles probably, maybe a little bit, maybe 15, 16 miles, something like that. And I do that when it's dry. I don't cycle. I'm not a wet weather cyclist. It's a bit muddy and there's not much fun in the pouring rain, and there's plenty of that in Manchester. So I have a train pass. So I take the train when it's raining, and when it's dry, when it's dry in the morning and the afternoon, which is again it's probably maybe half the time, perhaps, or certainly less in certain months, then I commute in. So I've also did a 100-kilometre sportive on it with 4,500 feet of climbing. I did that mostly, bizarrely, in eco mode. I didn't really need anything else to go up the hills, maybe bumping up a little bit for the very steep ones. And I had about 40%. Well, I had 2 full bars of battery left when I finished the 200 kilometres. But the way the battery works is a bit unusual on the Bosch's. So the battery remaining scenario, which here obviously is showing. It's going to focus on it or not. There we are. Focus. You see, it's got 5 bars. And those bars drop down, so that's at the moment the charge is 88%. I know that because I've got a diagnostic report, but otherwise it just goes in chunks. But the problem with the chunks is that they're not even chunks. So the first bar is worth a lot more electrical power than the last one. So unfortunately, I don't know if there's some new software update that have just coming down. So I don't know if they've improved that. But you shouldn't ever think you'll get as long a range out of your last bar as you got out of your first one. By my implication, I think the first 2 bars are more than half the energy in the battery, from my experience. So the first bar takes a long time to drop off, and the second bar takes quite a long time to drop off, and then by the time you get to the last 2 bars, you can just shoot through them quite quickly. I'm not quite clear what that is. It's probably reading some sort of I don't know, voltage or amperage, voltage I guess it's reading, and maybe the voltage drops quite precipitous towards the end. I don't know. I'm not a battery guy, so I don't know exactly what's happening. Anything else in it to say? Not really. I've put, as you can see, some spoke wheels on just for side visibility at night if I'm cycling home down roads, especially down the dark Oxford Road in Manchester, which is a big rush hour, a lot of traffic coming across. So I want to be seen from the side as well as the front and back. So I've put light up little spoke things on. There's LEDs. They're fine. They flash blue, I think those, which is nice. And I also cycle down the river at night sometimes. It's pitch black, and it makes you look like a Tron light cycle from the side, which is quite cool. But they're just cheap things, a couple of quid each, I think. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to say. It's been absolutely spot on. I mean, there's been literally nothing's happened to it. I fallen off it once, which was my own fault, when I drove into a tram line and broke my foot. That was beginning of December, so that wasn't a lot of fun. So I'm only just now getting back into it, because I took a month off commuting in because of that. It was a bit sore. My ligaments had a bit of damage as well. But other than that, it's been absolutely fine. The tyres, obviously you can see the wear. That's nearly 3,000 kilometres of wear on those tyres, and you can see they're basically not worn at all. So again, I think they're meant to be good for about 10,000 kilometres, the Schwabers. So, and they're only like 25 quid each or something. So that's fine. Okay, there's not much more to say, I don't think, other than to look at the diagnostics to see how what it's saying about my performances. Let's see if we can focus down on it. There we go. So the odometer's 1,800 miles. Yeah. Operating time 199. What's a bit unusual about me? Energy consumption is 5.3 watt hours per mile, which is very low energy, very low energy consumption. But the reason for that will become apparent if you go down. I've had very little in turbo. It's just for blasting up steep hills, or when I've accidentally charged the battery 100% and want to get it drained down a bit. Distance in sport mode, 12.3 miles, hardly at all. Distance in tour, which is my main commuting setting, 420. So obviously I'm commuting, I don't want to get sweaty, and I just want to get there quickly, so I tend to use tour for that. And eco mode, which is the main mode I use when I'm actually paddling around up and down canals and going up the peaks and things, and just on the weekend, because I'm not usually rushing. 507 miles. And the distance without assistance, 857 miles. So you can see that I use it in a rather unusual way. I use it to moderate my heart rate. So I tend, apart from the commute, where I just want to get there, at the weekends I just have a heart rate monitor on, and when my heart rate gets to around 150-ish, I tend to just put it on. So I do it just to make sure that my heart isn't being overly strained. My next door neighbour a few years ago on a mountain bike dropped dead at age 54 trying to go up a hill from a cold start in Wales. So I've always had a heart rate monitor, and I've really, the reason I got the electric bike originally was that I was worried that going up into the peak on my mountain bike, it wasn't that I wasn't physically capable of going up into the peak on my mountain bike. It was just that when I went up into the peak on my mountain bike, my heart rate was maxing out and it was making me a bit nervous. So I decided to deal with that by getting an e-bike. And the other reason I got an e-bike was that on very long trips, 70, 80 kilometre hot day trips in the middle of the day, even on flat, by the time I was coming back, I was getting a bit stressed, getting a bit overheated. And I felt that it would be a good idea to use the e-bike to make sure that if I got to a stage where I'd basically blown and was overheated and not enjoying it, I could just turn the e-bike on and cruise back down the rivers and canals without having to worry about the effort I was putting in. So they're the two main reasons I bought the bike, and it's been absolutely fantastic. And I've explored a lot more and cycled a lot more. I have a Strava app, and I've also got a standard sort of fitness run that I do down Disbury. So this isn't all my cycling. I do a sort of 14-kilometre quick sort of dash down the river and around a park in Didsbury and back home again to Stockport on my mountain bike, and I always have, and I've used exactly the same mountain bike for 25 years and not changed it at all, and so I can tell that my fitness levels have improved significantly by use of the e-bike. I am about 10 to 15, maybe probably 10 beats a minute more efficient. So if I look at my Strava stats from say 3 or 4 years ago when I was doing doing the cycle down the river, the standard cycle, I can see how fast I did segments, what my heart rate was, and I can cut in the same time of year, and I can compare that to having whilst I was using the e-bike as well, and I could see that just putting the mileage in the legs meant that I was about 10 beats a minute fitter 10 BPM fitter for whatever, in other words, if a section would have taken me at that speed, 150 beats a minute, it was now taking me 140 beats a minute. So a certain improvement in fitness. I haven't lost any weight, probably the contrary. Especially after I broke my foot before Christmas. So I'm not any lighter, but I am fitter anyway. So that's the reason I've done a lot of driving there without assistance. The battery voltage is 40.5. The current battery charge level is 88. That's a bit high. I like to keep it in usually just about the 60, around sort of between 40 and 80 usually if I can. Just you don't want to store a battery at full charge. Certainly not for any extended period because that's not good for it. You don't want to run it at 20% either if you can help it. So I tend to keep it in that sort of range. It goes down to a couple of bars, and I charge it to 8 to 4 bars, and that's how I tend to operate. Obviously, the range is huge. You can see if you're doing 5 miles at watts, and you've got a 500 watt. If you're doing 5 watt hours per mile, and you've got a 500 watts, 100 miles of range in theory, on average, the way I use it. Battery charge 80%, number of charge full charge. So the temperatures, you got to keep you shouldn't get the battery temperature too cold, and you shouldn't get it too hot. So that seems all right. And you'll see most of the time that gives me a split down of what I use. So I use turbo very occasionally. Usually that would be if I'm overcharged the battery by accident, to forget to turn it off and want to just blast up some hills and burn it down a bit. Sport 2%, Eco 37%, and Tour 56%. So that's the split. So it's been excellent. I'm fitter, even if I'm not lighter. It's much more fun certainly on a dry day, especially on a nice summer evening or something, to cycle home and back into work than it is to cram myself, walk through Piccadilly in Manchester with all the the druggies and then cram myself onto a crowded train and then walk back and then drive back from the station or whatever. It's much better to do it door to door. It's also faster. I can commute in about 40 minutes from my house to Deansgate in Manchester. Maybe 45 minutes if the traffic lights are against me. And that's about as fast as even the most perfect run with driving near the station, hopping to the station, getting on a train, getting off the train, getting onto a little bus in town and getting down. It's about the same time. There's obviously guaranteed that I'll do that and I get exercise. So when I come back at night, I've done 25 miles of cycling. I don't have to worry about doing any exercise that night. So I would fully recommend it. I don't know what else to say. I mean, the battery's in here, obviously. So you can, it's very difficult with one finger, unfortunately. Let me just put that down for a sec. There we are. The battery's in there, so it's fine. There's a little lock. You just unlock it. You can charge it when it's on the bike, but I don't. I take it inside to charge in the normal room temperature, and that's fine. Everything's been absolutely great. I thoroughly recommend this. I bought this, I think, for just under £1,600. I think it's an excellent deal at that price. It's a 500 watt battery, watt hour battery, as you can see. But even up to sort of £2,000, this is still an excellent purchase in my view. I thoroughly recommend the Bosch ones.